Okay, welcome everybody. Coach Kevin here, and let's go ahead and get started. First thing I want to go ahead and do is share my screen with you. And for those of you who've been with us for a while, you know what I'm going to share here really quick. But if you're brand new with us today, I just wanted to share some things that'll make participating with us a little more enjoyable. And first thing I want to share with you is we have a Facebook group that coincides with these meetup groups, these meetups that we have. And it's got the same name. It's called I Want to Be Really Rich and I Do Not Apologize for It. The only difference is it doesn't have the city initials. So I want to be really rich and I do not apologize for it. You can search it, go into your Facebook account and search that name and you'll find it. The other way you could find it is you could go to facebook.com/groups/, I want to be really rich. What I'll do here really quickly for you is put the link here in chat. Hopefully that popped in there. At least it was supposed to. There we go. And if you can click on it right now and ask to join it without kicking yourself out of Zoom, that would be great. If not, because once the Zoom meeting's over, you won't be able to actually see this, okay? Because you won't be able to get into chat any longer. So that's why you might want to, but again, you can find us by the name. So why would you want to do that? Why would you want to join it in the first place? We have a place typically at the top, we'll pin any special announcements we have. But the other thing we do is you can see right here, there's yesterday's call, there's the day before, there's the day before that. In addition, sometimes people are asking questions and interacting. And for instance, right here is a file. The file is actually a book that I've given to you guys for free, and it's something we're studying. So the reason to join the group is it's where you can find everything you're really going to need to participate with us. So I highly recommend that you do that. Okay, we'll skip out of there for now. And the next thing I want to share with you really quick is how you can, so you can go into the group, or if you prefer, you can actually get the file from the source I got it from, which is fine. We're in the process of taking apart a book called Hidden Treasures. When I say taking apart, we're reading through it, but we're also discussing it and how it actually applies to us in real life. And I'm also sharing commentary and whatnot as we go through it. So that's what I mean by kind of picking it apart. Why did I choose this book? Number one, I know the author, so that's helpful. She and I are friends. She's someone who actually, going way back, was a coach and facilitator for Bob Proctor. She's been on her own for a while now. And I actually attended a Science of Getting Rich seminar that she used to facilitate for Bob Proctor's organization. Excuse me. And that's where we met each other and became friends. We actually found out at the time that we were living in the same city, and again, became friends. I also became a Bob Proctor coach and facilitator for a period of time, and I'm independent now also. But she wrote a wonderful book called Hidden Treasures. She's written a couple other books too. But this particular book takes a deep dive into the laws that govern the universe in relationship to manifesting money and wealth in your life. It helps for other things too. But law of attraction is not the only law that governs manifestation, especially when we're talking about trying to increase our income and manifest wealth in our lives. There are actually multiple universal laws that you need to be aware of and you need to obey in order for everything to come together the way it ought to. And by the way, law of attraction is actually a subsidiary law of the law of vibration. Some of you know that, some of you don't. So it's not actually a law in and of itself, but it's a very good buzzword, law of attraction, right? Sounds really cool. But that's one of the problems with it is by strictly speaking law of attraction, we're leaving out multiple other laws that you have to obey in order to, again, increase your income and manifest wealth in a creative manner, okay? So Leslie is going through these laws in this book. And I thought it would be good to share this with you guys and take it apart and help you understand these laws, so that as you obey them and follow through with that, you will manifest more money in your life and you'll have more wealth in your life. So I wanted to make it easier for you. So if you were to go to hiddentreasuresbook.com, that's hiddentreasuresbook.com, you scroll down just a little ways and you'll see click here for download. And just like most others, she'll ask for your name and probably email address to do that, which is fine. And then what you will be given is a copy of the book. We've been in this for a few days. We started this on Monday, so here we are on Friday. Excuse me. And we're on page 35 right now. We're actually in the middle of a chapter, in the middle of one of the laws that she's teaching about. I'm not going to go backwards with this. I'm going to start us right here where we're at with this. But I wanted to make this available. Hang on one sec. I'm going to come out of my screen share for just a second and go back in. Okay, just make sure this is working the way I want it to. Okay, hold on. One thing that I'm not seeing here. There we go. I apologize. Somehow I shut my video off. Didn't mean to do that. There we go. That's why the screen looked different to me, because that also helps me see you guys if I want to take time to do that. Okay, cool. So we're in the middle of a chapter, not sure specifically which one it is, but I can tell you we're on page 35. So for those of you who've already downloaded this and want to follow along, we're on 35 of 115 of the PDF. I don't know if it's the page of the book, but it is the page of the PDF. One last thing before we jump in that I want to share with you is you will have plenty of time, or should have plenty of time, I should say. I like to leave 10 to 15 minutes of our 45 minutes together for you to have an opportunity to share thoughts, feelings, opinions, experiences, ahas that you're receiving, and to ask questions. So I'm not going to be hopping into chat, answering any questions with you guys while we're going through reading this. And I'm actually not going to go into chat anyway. What I'll do is when we have that 10 to 15 minutes to do that, we will be off a screen share and then we will open it up and then you'll be able to come off mute and share your comments, opinions, experiences, and ask your questions. So just wanted to share that with you, because if you start typing into chat asking me questions, I'm not going to see them or be paying attention to them right now. All right. Why we pray often. Let me get a quick sip of water here. As important as it is, excuse me, that we strive to get our minds and hearts in alignment with the Lord's, our reason for praying often is important as well. We must pray often about our desire, not to be sure He heard us, okay? But to ask for continual guidance and seek for ourselves the confirmation from His Spirit that we're on the right path and that He will grant the success we seek. A confirmation is one of those tender mercies which the Spirit sometimes provides to help us be strong through the waiting period. Remember, if my child asks me for a sandwich and I say yes, it would be out of place for her to ask again. So it is with us. After receiving a confirmation that our request will be granted, to continue asking for the same thing would seem inappropriate. I believe that may constitute one aspect of the vain repetitions the scriptures counsel against. Vain repetitions. Let's look at how often we ask. When we pray for something, do we use vain repetitions? Perhaps we've done so unknowingly. Perhaps you have a desire for which you've asked the Lord time and time again, hoping that your persistence would pay off. When my children do that to me, I call it nagging, especially if I've just responded with a yes, without having a chance to deliver it yet. It would be perplexing for my child to ask again and again after receiving a positive response. I'd wonder, don't you believe me? Didn't you hear me? Just because I say yes, it doesn't mean that it has to happen in the next 30 seconds. There is a space of time between yes and the delivery of the promised sandwich. It's a reasonable thing to allow some time for the goods to show up. So, what if I ask once with a heart full of faith, knowing that to ask again might be what the Lord refers to as vain repetition? After all, He already heard us the first time, and in fact, knew what we needed long before we ever uttered the prayer. If we took the time to first ask if He would grant the request, and if we received an answer of peace, then wouldn't it be unnecessary to keep asking? Perhaps instead we could be at peace, knowing it was only a matter of time, because that which we asked for was already on its way. Then we'd begin to move our feet and get to work as though it depended on us. We'd make our way to the lunch table and maybe even get the bread out of the bread box and jelly from the refrigerator ourselves. We'd remind ourselves that He said, "Ask and ye shall receive." And since we asked, we'd know that we would eventually receive. We wouldn't feel desperate or think that our repeated requests were necessary to get Him to hear us and respond. Let us be careful lest we nag the Lord. Sometimes we can weary Him with our petitions, and even if they're not His will for us, He will grant the request and allow us to suffer the natural consequences of failing to trust Him in all things. Be careful what you pray for, as they say, for you just might get it. Does this mean we should pray only once for what we need or desire? No, we're to pray continually over all things. Then how do we avoid vain repetitions? After making our request and receiving a witness of peace, then from there, instead of praying that we might receive it, it would seem more fitting that our continual prayer would be prayers of gratitude for that which is coming. Awesome. I use my understanding of the law of perpetual transmutation, which, by the way, that's the law that we're in right now. So we're still studying and working on the first one that she's sharing. Okay. Once she started sharing the laws in the book, in I think chapter 3 or so. I use my understanding of the law of perpetual transmutation to imagine the resources I need finding their way to me. This helps me believe that if I get to work doing all I can do, there are unseen forces at work as well, preparing to provide me with all I need to accomplish the goal. I expect to make the happy connection somewhere along the way. Isn't that amazing? If you think the first law was intriguing, just wait, it gets better. All right. Lesson 2, law of relativity. Occasionally we find ourselves in disagreeable circumstances. It is natural to think, my life stinks. Everything's going wrong. Well, don't forget lesson 1, the law of perpetual transmutation. These are thoughts too, and if we allow ourselves to hold these kinds of thoughts in our mind and allow ourselves to believe them, then by law, the formless substance starts to be obedient, and eventually your circumstances will be a reflection of these thoughts. The law of relativity is useful for helping to keep good thoughts in your mind. The law of relativity states that nothing we experience is fundamentally good or bad. Bad things that happen to us are only bad relative to something better. So if you're convinced that you're dealing with a rotten circumstance, then ask God to help you see it differently. Compare your situation to something much worse, and you'll be able to maintain more faithful thoughts. That is the goal. Some of the earliest pioneer settlers in the American West traveled with handcarts instead of horse-drawn carriages. They were religious refugees seeking a place where they would not be persecuted for their beliefs. Their leader had organized numerous groups to travel together. While many came in covered wagons, others were short on time as well as supplies, and began their journey with handcarts. One particular company was called the Martin Handcart Company, which was organized to leave late in the summer from Iowa. The members of the company were caught in early snows near the Continental Divide in 1856 before being rescued, and their suffering was unlike anything I can comprehend. I want to take you on a piece of their journey. Put yourself in their shoes. Pay close attention to your feelings as you visualize what you're reading. It is important for this lesson that you concentrate as you read. rather than just skimming the words and glossing over them. When they say mother, think of your own mother. When they say I, let it be you, etc. At the end of this discussion, we will be going through an exercise to help drive this law home. Since this book is intended to make a difference, and since a difference in your life relies on a switch in your thinking, there will never be a better time than right now to try it, or right here, right now to try it. Practice exercising your mental faculties by visualizing and allowing yourself to experience what you're reading. This one thing may be the most important thing you can do during this time you're already investing to read this book. Let's begin the journey. John Kirkman. Before we left Iowa, my dear mother, picture your mother, had given birth to a son, Peter. Imagine a baby brother, etc. She was naturally weak with the care of a nursing baby and 5 other children. Father was too weak from want of food, having denied himself for us. The terrible strain of the journey was too much for him, and one night near Sweetwater, he passed quietly away at age of 35. Our little brother Peter died the same night. They built a fire to thaw the ground so that a grave could be dug. Then, with my baby brother clasped in his arms, they wrapped him in a blanket and laid him tenderly away. My darling mother had to take up the journey alone with us 5 children. Provisions were almost gone. Desolation reigned. The company passed off the main road to Martin's Ravine to escape the terrible blizzards and storms, for we had little clothing and had given up all hope. Death had taken a heavy toll, and the ravine was like an overcrowded tomb. No mortal tongue could describe the suffering. Elizabeth's sermon. My husband's health began to fail, and his heart almost broken to see me falling in shafts. Myself and children hungry, almost naked, footsore, and himself nearly done for. Many trials came after this. My oldest boy had the mountain fever. We had to haul him in the cart. There was not room in the wagon. One day we started him out before the carts in the morning to walk with the aged and sick. But we had not gone far on our journey before we found him lying by the roadside, unable to go any farther. I picked him up and put him on my back and drew my cart as well, but could not manage far. So put him in the cart, which made 3 children and my luggage, my husband failing more each day. The captain put a young man to help me for a short time. My other son, Henry, walked at 7 years old, 1,300 miles, with the exception of a few miles. I will here state there was no time in crossing the river to stop and take off clothing, but we had to wade through and draw our carts at the same time with our clothes dripping wet. My husband's sufferings have always pained me, and I can never forget them. Poor Rob's age 5 feet began to freeze. I cannot remember the place. It was after wading a very deep river, Plot maybe. The freezing commenced. We had no wood but sagebrush. We went out and cut the sage to keep the fire all night, covering them up with their feet to the fire, and cut some more and kept the fire as well as I could. My clothes froze stiff. Well, we got through that night. Your father would not walk now. He would get into wagon after wagon only to be turned out. The cattle were giving out, and everyone had their friends, but the friend death would soon end his sufferings. John, age 9, and Rob had to ride. Henry, age 7, walked. Your father would take my arm and walk a little distance, fall on his knees with weakness. We moved from Devil's Gate. After our food had given out, as I said before, we went into our tents to die. I always thought I could get through to Salt Lake City, and I tried to encourage my husband, but he was starving. He had always lived good at home. Your father, after having some food and clothes, seemed to revive. He called you to him and told you to be good children and do all you could for me. And then he said to me, God bless you, Ellie. That being the name he called me. You have saved my life this time. I said, we must hold out now and get into the wagons. But we had to go back to the quarter pound of flour, and he sank under it. I think he would not have died if we had got food, but he was spared the trial ahead. We went to bed about 3 o'clock. He put his arm around me and said, "I'm done," and breathed his last. Father was buried in the morning with 2 more in the grave. I stood like a statue, bewildered. Not a tear. The cold chills, even now as I write, creep over my body, for I feel I can still see the wolves waiting for their bodies as they would come down to camp before we left. When I got into camp, I found it. Some help to toast the rawhide on the coals and chew it. It helped to keep the hunger away, for I was feeling it rather keenly now. I had to take a portion of poor Robert's feet off, which pierced my very soul. I had to sever the leaders with a pair of scissors. Little did I think when I bought them in Old England that they would be used for such a purpose. Every day some portion was decaying until the poor boy's feet were all gone. Then John's began to freeze, and then afterwards my own. Poor Brother Blair, a very tall, thin man, he was starving and was eating a piece of griddle cake. Another poor brother, not as hungry, asked for a piece of it. He said, "I cannot do it. I want it myself." Poor fellow, he died in the night, and so one after another passed away. Fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, and friends. Many, many honest souls laid in Mother Earth. A severe storm came up. I think it was on the Sweetwater, but I was so troubled I forgot all about the names of the places. My eldest boy, John's feet decaying, my boys, both of them losing their limbs, their father dead, my own feet very painful. I thought, why can't I die? Are you taking time to feel a portion of what they felt? One more to go. Ephraim Hanks. I reached the ill-fated train just as the immigrants were camping for the night. The sight that met my gaze as I entered their camp can never be erased from my memory. The starved forms and haggard countenances of the poor sufferers as they moved about slowly, shivering with cold to prepare their scanty evening meal, was enough to touch the stoutest heart. When they saw me coming, they hailed me with joy inexpressible. And when they further beheld the supply of fresh meat I brought into camp, their gratitude knew no bounds. Flocking around me, one would say, "Oh, please give me a small piece of meat." Another would exclaim, "My poor children are starving. Do you give me a little?" And children with tears in their eyes would call out, "Give me some, give me some." At first, I tried to wait on them and handed out the meat as they called for it. But finally, I told them to help themselves. 5 minutes later, both my horses had been released of their extra burden. The meat was all gone. But I have but a very little to say about the sufferings of Captain Martin's company before I joined it. But it had passed through terrible ordeals. Women and the larger children helped the men to pull the handcarts in crossing the frozen streams. They had to break the ice with their feet in fording the Platte River, the largest stream they had to cross after the cold weather set in. The clothes of the immigrants were frozen stiff around their bodies before they could exchange them for others. This is supposed to have been the cause of many deaths, which occurred soon afterwards. It has been stated on good authority that 19 immigrants died one night. The survivors who performed the last acts of kindness to those who perished were not strong enough to dig the graves of sufficient depth to preserve the bodies from the wild beasts, and wolves were actually seen tearing open the graves before the company was out of sight. Many of the survivors, in witnessing the terrible afflictions and losses, became at last almost stupefied or mentally dazed. What is your biggest challenge right now? What would these immigrants have to say about the load you are carrying? What are your feelings about what they had to endure? Read on. A time later, there was a meeting where some people were expressing criticism that church leadership had allowed the Martin handcart company to leave so late in the season. A man who had been in that company and was listening to their comments was finally compelled to stand and speak his mind. He asked the people to please stop, and he told them that they had no knowledge of what they were talking about. He said the facts and details of the experience were meaningless because they didn't provide proper context of the issues at hand. Was it a mistake to go so late? Yes, his sufferings were unspeakable and many did not survive. But he asked if they ever heard any of the survivors speak a word of criticism. No, they had not, and neither did any of the company leave the church. Imagine that. He said that because of their experiences, they developed an absolute assurance that God lives, for they developed a strong personal enduring relationship with him through their adversities. I'm reminded of Job's similar response to Zophar, the Naamathite. Job said, "Hold your peace, let me alone, that I may speak, and let come on me what will. Wherefore do I take my flesh in my teeth, and put my life in mine hand? Though he slay me, yet I will trust in him." I don't know how easy it is for the man in the handcart company to feel gratitude while he was still on the trek, but in hindsight, he was able to recognize the blessing which came out of the adversity. What if we could have foresight about what our hindsight will be? If we can expect that we will be able to look back on our challenges with gratitude, then maybe we can let ourselves feel that gratitude a little early. Gratitude always pleases God, and he will always bless us for our expressions of gratitude. In hindsight, the man said that at times he was so weary that he'd look ahead at a hill or a patch of sand, determined to go just that far, and then give up because he knew he wouldn't be able to pull the load through it. However, when he reached the slope or sandpit, there is where it seemed the cart began to push him. As retold by David O. McKay, the man said, "I have looked back many times to see who was pushing my cart, but my eyes saw no one." As you can see, the general feeling held by this gentleman was definitely not one of bitterness. He concluded that the price he paid was a privilege to pay because through it, he became acquainted with God himself. What an amazing attitude toward adversity. The more submissive we are to God, I believe the more grateful we can be in our challenges. We can trust that under any circumstance, he has our best interest at heart. We will not always understand his ways, but to trust him as we are led along through life's lessons brings immeasurable peace. We can have gratitude for our present conditions, no matter what they are, because it's the lessons of the present that prepare us for the blessings of the future. More about Job. We cannot discuss this lesson without mentioning more about the biblical story of Job. Job truly had to be the most unfortunate man that ever lived, until his adversity was well behind him. He had everything anyone could ever want, and bit by bit, the Lord allowed it to all be taken away: his wealth, his family, his friends, his health. Nevertheless, take a look at how he handled it in his words. "The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." What? Shall we receive good by the hand of God, and shall not receive evil? Even when he was overcome with grief from his suffering, he cursed the day he was born, but never cursed God. After this opened Job his mouth, and cursed his day. And Job spake and said, "Let the day perish wherein I was born." In the end, the Lord prospered Job from 7,000 to 14,000 sheep, 3,000 to 6,000 camels, 500 to 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 500 to 1,000 she-asses. Similarly, we can prosper as we choose to look for the good in any situation. God appreciates our gratitude and rewards us for it sooner or later. It's not just a great bedtime story. It's in the Bible to teach us how we might be a little more live a more blessed life. By living this principle, we are rewarded immediately with greater peace. And if we continue to live by law, we are more likely to enjoy greater prosperity as well. This is the law of relativity. You want better circumstances? Everybody does. But you must first begin by seeking peace in your present circumstances. You must feel gratitude for all the blessings that you already enjoy. I've heard it said, "I complained that I had no shoes until I met a man who had no feet." The law of relativity is a tool to help us find gratitude. It gives us a way to think more cheerfully and thus be prepared for greater blessings. Be filled with the Spirit, giving thanks always for all things unto God and the Father, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Do not use the law of relativity against yourself. You could do this very easily by comparing your situation to better ones. We are to think of better circumstances as the first step to having them, but we do not think of them to make ourselves feel bad about where we are. We think of them with hope and gratitude that we will eventually enjoy them in reality. Use the law of relativity to aid you in keeping positive thoughts. As you do, the law of perpetual transmutation from chapter 1 will ensure that better circumstances are truly on their way. If there, is there ever an opportunity to commiserate without sabotaging our overall objective? Perhaps I heard of one very practical way that Dr. Stephen R. Covey, best-selling author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families, handled complaining in his family. As the story goes, when they hiked together, they didn't tolerate whining from their children, but at one point he let them all have a break to rest, whereupon they were encouraged to complain as much as they needed to. "Oh, my feet are killing me. How much farther? I'm so tired." Whatever they wanted to say all along, here was their opportunity. And with everyone letting it go at the same time, they eventually became bored with commiserating and were once again able to move on cheerfully. The burden didn't change, but the way they felt about it did. This kind of approach is not the typical response. It had to be intentioned, just as an ambulance won't automatically come without someone first placing a 911 call. We have to choose to fight the natural tendencies we all have, or give them controlled release, as Dr. Covey demonstrates. But it gets easier with practice, so we must never give up trying. Some circumstances will not change in this life, but how we feel about them can change in a moment. How we deal with them can change for the better. Sometimes it is only after we allow ourselves to feel differently about our problem that we finally receive the blessing we seek. According to the Book of Mormon, there was a group of people who lived about 120 BC on the American continent who experienced this process of change as I just described. Here's an excerpt from Isaiah's writings. This segment of the story has inspired me and given me faith when I have been in the middle of overwhelming challenges. And it came to pass that so great were the afflictions that they began to cry mightily to God. And Amulon commanded that they should stop their cries, and he put guards over them to watch them, that whosoever should be found calling on God should be put to death. And Alma and his people did not raise their voices to the Lord their God, but did pour out their hearts to him, and he did know the thoughts of their hearts. And it came to pass that the voice of the Lord came to them in their affliction, saying, Lift up your heads and be of good comfort, for I know of the covenant which ye have made unto me, and I will covenant with my people and deliver them out of bondage. And I will also ease the burdens which are put upon your shoulders, that even you cannot feel them upon your backs, even while you're in bondage. And this will I do, that ye may stand as witnesses for me hereafter, and that ye may know of a surety that I, the Lord God, do visit my people in their afflictions. And now it came to pass that the burdens which were laid upon Alma and his brethren were made light. Yea, the Lord did strengthen them that they could bear up their burdens with ease. And they did submit cheerfully and with patience to all the will of the Lord. And in the morning, the Lord caused a deep sleep to come upon the Lamanites. Yea, all their taskmasters were in a profound sleep. And Alma and his people departed into the wilderness. And when they had traveled all day, they pitched their tents in a valley. They called the valley Alma because he led their way in the wilderness. Yea, and in the valley of Alma, they poured out their thanks to God because he had been merciful unto them and eased their burdens and had delivered them out of bondage. For they were in bondage, and none could deliver them except it were the Lord their God. And they gave thanks to God, yea, all their men and their women and all their children that could speak lifted their voices in praise of their God. What if the Lord could help us feel our burdens differently? Through knowledge of the law of relativity, he's helped me to do that now and then. And I believe it can help you too. Just try it for a few minutes. Feel some gratitude for something. If you skip this exercise, you run the risk of limiting the extent to which the Lord may bless you. Lesson 3 will teach you how you can use this principle to begin attracting more favorable circumstances to you, and best of all, what is going on behind the scenes, so to speak, to make it happen. So the next one will be law of vibration, which, by the way, the subsidiary law of the law of vibration is the law of attraction. So we're going to get to understand law of attraction better on the next chapter that we go through. Okay, so I'm going to come off of that, and cool. This is your opportunity to share your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, and or to ask questions. All you need to do is just come off mute, start talking, and we'll take you in the order that you come off. So you, again, comments, ahas, whatever it might be, or any questions you might have, go ahead and come off mute and feel free to ask.
Hi, this is Francine.
Hi, Francine.
A little confusing. So the other day we talked about making our list of 300. We talked about, writing down our desires, what we want, doing the movie of, looking at imagining what we want and making it happen and how it's happening, and we are the actor of the movie and so on. So now we're told, okay, you've got to stop asking because it sounds like we're going to be nagging. So where's the balance, and how do we make a separation between knowing what we want, asking for it, and making sure that we keep it in mind, or do we just forget it? I have an experience that, one time, I'm a realtor, so
Okay.
I was visiting, I've sold a lot of $1 million homes, and I see that they have, chandeliers in their master bedroom closets and in the bathroom and 2 shower heads. So when I visited the house that I'm into right now, and I saw I'm like, I always thought, oh, this is so cool. I want, that would be so nice to have in my house. And I let it go. And I let it go. And I never thought of it. And I never saw myself owning that or anything. And then when I visited this house before I bought it, where I am now, I saw the chandelier over the bathtub, and I'm like, oh, yes, this is really cool. And the 2 shower head, I'm like, oh, yes, I've always wanted that. So where does this all fall into? I mean,
Okay, sure.
so
No, I get where you're going with it. So here's why that happened easily for you. Because you, from a subconscious standpoint, and you hadn't looked for the home yet, right? I mean, you imagined and visualized this. Was it months or years prior to moving into the home?
years.
Okay, perfect. So you were setting up a feeling out there, but you weren't trying to force and make it happen at the time. You just enjoyed it.
Right.
And because that's what you were doing with it, your subconscious mind accepted it. Your subconscious mind is like, okay, cool, that's awesome. And it put that essentially there and allowed that to come in, and it knows that that's what you wanted, and you didn't have to be repetitive about it, because the subconscious mind wasn't being forced or pushed or anything to try and do something right this minute. It was in opposition to your programming and your belief. You were just enjoying and telling it this is what you want, and it's like, okay, and it remembered, so that when it came time to actually get what you want, that's exactly what happened to me in the house that we're in right now. Funny enough, is what you're talking about. So you really didn't have to go repetitively ask for anything. There's a difference between affirmations for yourself and repetitively asking God in the universe for something. Okay. When you create an affirmation, I'll give you just a for instance type of affirmation. Okay. And Bob Proctor likes to start them this way. I don't start all mine this way, but he likes to start out with, I'm so happy and grateful now that, to make it in a present tense type thing. So I'm so happy and grateful now that I am living in the home of my dreams. Let's just leave it right there, right? When you've come up with a clear, concise wanting to have the home that you want of your dreams, the way to do that and impress it on formless substance and ask for it and God is to essentially decide what you want, make it clear, and ask if it and ask for it. Ask in the feeling of, is this in alignment with your will for me, or do you have something else in mind for me? And then if you get a good feeling about it, you know that that is in alignment with what it is that's good for you. So now you don't have to go ask them anymore, but you might repeat to yourself for subconscious programming purposes an affirmation of some sort, um, to help your subconscious. If it's in opposition to what you asked for, that doesn't mean God and the universe are in opposition. It just means your subconscious mind has been programmed to not accept that yet. You utilize affirmations. Most of what you're doing when you're putting out that feeling is you're trying to get your subconscious mind to cooperate with you so that the vibration that you're in is in alignment with what you want. You can ask God for something to receive it, God in the universe, and get the answer that it's right for you and good for you and that they're more than willing to help you have it. However, to keep in vibration with that, your subconscious mind has to become in vibration with it. So you should take that answer as a yes in the affirmative. You should take that answer to help give you a good feeling and to increase your faith. But when the subconscious mind starts fighting with you, instead of going toe to toe with it and trying to punch it out, it's going to win that boxing match if you go at it that way. But what you can do now is you can take different times throughout the day. I again recommend when you very first wake up and right before you go to sleep. If you do it in the middle of the day sometime too, that's great. But you take 5, 10, 15 minutes and you go live in that house as if you really own it in your imagination with the gratitude that it's already yours. And you use that house in your imagination exactly the way you would be using it if it was already physically manifested. The subconscious mind won't fight that so much. And you do that over and over and over. And eventually the subconscious mind, it won't be able to tell the difference between the imaginary and the real. And when you have gotten to the point where you come out of that kind of visualization meditative state to where now that feels more real than the world around us, and to where the world around us no longer feels real to us anymore, keep doing it. But that's when you know your subconscious mind is actually starting to accept it too. That doesn't mean you stop there. The subconscious mind is now saying, okay, for Francine, not the house she's living in now, I guess she's trying to tell me that's not normal for her. What's normal and better for her is the one she keeps imagining. I'm gonna hang on here a minute because now I'm getting two conflicting ideas. I have what's been normal for her, but I'm starting to feel that that isn't normal any longer. This is what's supposed to be. And as you start moving towards that, your vibration from a subconscious standpoint will start moving closer to what God and the universe already told you that they're totally willing to deliver for you. Really, what you got to do to receive is get your subconscious mind to quit fighting with you. So when you receive things easily, any of us that put something out there and we receive it right away, typically it's because we don't have a subconscious argument. Our subconscious goes, all right, cool, whatever. And if we really, really want it, and the subconscious mind has nothing against it because there's no program in opposition, the subconscious mind will accept it more quickly and go, and you put it in more and more to the subconscious. But there's a difference between affirmations and repetition for subconscious programming than there is for asking God in the universe to deliver something to you. They'll deliver it as soon as your vibration is predominantly in alignment with what you've asked for. But it's already headed on its way as long as the direction that you're going in your thoughts and your feelings are in alignment with what you asked for. Does that help you a little bit?
Yeah, it's still a little confusing, but yes, it's
Okay, so what part are you confused about? Let's help you out. I don't want to just leave you hanging.
well, when I'm thinking and visualizing what I want to have, next and all that. So
Uh-huh.
what difference is it that I'm visualizing it? Is it because I'm not, and I'm also thinking God in the universe
Uh-huh.
that, okay, I already have it.
Cool. Okay.
So my subconscious is like, yeah, but you don't really have it. So,
Right.
and
So, and
I'm
that's normal.
praying to God again. I'm basically,
Well, here's what you don't do. Okay. You're praying to God again, but you're kind of pleading, I think. Okay. I don't know what you're saying. There's a difference between thanking God and praying to God and asking again.
Okay. So I'm praying, thanking him for
That's
giving
the
it.
better way to do it.
Okay.
Don't ask for it again.
Okay.
You already got it's okay. You already got sure, you can have it. Sure. I'll help you get it. The only thing that has to happen now is to get your subconscious mind to actually be in agreement, because your subconscious mind is the thing that's going to impress upon matter. The universe is going to impress upon it what it is you're going to receive, and it just wants to mirror back to you that vibration. So it's through the subconscious mind that the impression will get made and become solid. I think of God, so you guys can agree with me or disagree with me. Totally cool with this, okay? But let me give you my thoughts about God and the universe. And again, if you don't feel the same way, it's not required that you do. But this definitely helps me, especially when working to manifest things that I would like in my life. So I'm just going to I'll try and keep it simple. And by the way, we are over time. So anybody who has to go, I get it. I'm not holding anybody hostage here. And you can, you can get back into the recording later by going to the Facebook group. But I'm going to continue on for a little bit longer to help you guys and answer some questions. Okay. But if you do need to take off, totally understand that. I want to continue to help out here. So I personally separate God and the universe as two different things. I think of the universe as energy and matter. You'll in Science of Getting Rich, it's talked about as the formless substance, the thinking substance, the primal substance or whatever. But if we're thinking in terms of today's language to explain the universe, what it's actually made of, not how it's all put together, but the stuff that it's made of, it's referred to as energy or matter. Energy or matter responds. I know he talks about thinking substance, I get it, but it doesn't come up with its own ideas. It responds to us. We are intelligences, in a sense, that have the ability to create new thought. We don't just repeat back what's been said to us. We can actually come up with new ideas. We can actually think things different than most things in the animal kingdom. Most things in the animal kingdom are doing things in relationship to their instincts. But they don't go out there. A dog that wants a dog doesn't know it wants a new doghouse. Does that make sense? It can't even fathom the idea of a new doghouse because it doesn't get that. So it doesn't go out there and try and create a new doghouse. The only way it's going to get a new doghouse is if you decide that you want a new doghouse for your dog. But you can decide you want a new house, a new car, a new this, a new that. You can come up with ideas of things that you would like to create, things that you would like to be, do, or have. And energy or matter responds to that. But it doesn't respond strictly to our thought. Our thought creates a vibration. We refer to that. We're able to tell what the vibration is, whether it's good or bad, based upon our emotions. Our emotions are kind of our guidance system. If what we're thinking about at the moment feels good, we will have a good feeling. And then we know that the vibration being put out is in harmony with what it is that we want. If we're feeling bad right now, then we know that the vibration that we're putting out is out of harmony with what it is that we really are and what we really want. So boom, that's energy, matter. That's the formless substance. That's the thing that everything is made out of, but just in different forms. So let's go to God for a moment. My personal opinion, okay, my belief. I believe that God is very similar to us. I personally believe that God is someone who lived a life very similar already to what we're living, and he's just further along in the journey. What do I mean by that? I personally don't believe that when we die here on earth, that's it, we poof out of existence. I believe we existed prior to to showing up here on earth and doing our thing right now. And I believe we're going to continue and progress hereafter. Okay. So we're here learning how to utilize the power that we actually have inherently as intelligences, We're learning how our thoughts and feelings and the things that the actions we take, how the universe actually responds to those things by what it brings us in our life. The difference between us and God is God, when he decides, and say he or she, you can say whatever you want, but when God decides he wants something, he doesn't go back and question it. He totally, completely understands how the laws all function and interact with each other. And I believe he's been there, done that. I believe that we can become very similar, like, to who God is. That may sound like some of you guys may be like, what? No way. How? But let's look at it this way. We are all somewhere between, I imagine we're all 18 or older. So I'm going to say everybody on this call right now is somewhere between 18 and 100 years old. Well, let's pretend, and I think we've, again, have lived prior to this, but let's just say in a progression standpoint, we have now progressed to the point that we can progress to so far based upon where we are right now. And let's pretend, though, that God was on a planet going through something very similar to what we are. But let's say that that was, I'm going to just make up a number, I don't know how long that would take, 800,000 years ago. And God's still alive, still exists, just like we do. Do you think over 800,000 years, God may have learned some things that we don't know and gotten better at some stuff that we're not good at yet? I believe so. So here's what I tend to believe. When you say that prayer and ask God for something, God is the person that says, yep, you're on track. That is good for you. You can have it. And I'll even help you get it. Then what he does is, if you will stay engaged with what you want and work on it in the sense of feeling good about it and staying there, then what God does is the revelation or inspiration, intuition you receive is actually God telling you to make the left turn when you normally would have gone right. It is God that is the one that's actually telling you, hey, send an email to this person, but you don't really know why. It's God that tells the person across the country to give you a phone call from somebody you haven't heard from in the last 5 years. So God's the one who understands how all this works, and he's trying to teach us and show us how to interact with the universe so that instead of creating crap that we don't want, we actually create things that we do want. Again, those are my opinions, but that helps me in this process because I distinguish between the two things. And I go, okay, the energy is governed by law and it's only going to respond. But I never understood until I started learning about the law of attraction how that works. I didn't know that my thoughts and feelings had an impact energetically on the universe and on everything around me. And because we are physically, we have an intelligence, but it's clothed right now in a physical body, which is made out of that energy and matter. Well, everything made out of energy and matter interacts with each other. It doesn't matter whether it's in a solid form or whatever, but it's all the same stuff. So that's where our vibration actually manifests and goes through and touches the rest of the energy throughout the world and sends out that feeling. And it's that feeling that the law of attraction, that energy and matter are trying to basically take the feeling that we're emanating and give us the thing that feels like that to us. And that's when it will show up in its physical form, when we've done that for long enough into where our subconscious mind is no longer emanating, you're broke. It's emanating, you're rich. It's no longer emitting out a signal of can't, but it's actually emitting a signal that says can. And because of the programming that's gone into our subconscious since we were born, some of us, we all have different belief and faith in our ability to manifest at certain levels. Some of us are great with money. Some of us suck with it. Some of us are great with health and fitness. Some of us stink with it. Some of us are better with relationships. Some of us stink with it. But essentially, what we can do is look at our life now that we're learning and becoming more aware and go, okay, if there's something that I don't like about my life, don't focus on it and it's a bad thing. Say, well, if that's not what I want, what do I want? and then focus on the opposite and go change your vibration, and then get your subconscious to agree with you. How fast that happens is going to depend on how willing you are to stick with it and get good at this, because then your faith increases. But also how fast that happens will be somewhat relatable to how deep, and how long has you been programmed in the opposite. But it's okay. The cool thing about this is we are eternal beings. That's my belief. So how far we get in this physical life while we're here before we move on to whatever our next phase is, I don't know. For most people, it's somewhere, let's say 110 or 15, whatever. I know once upon a time, people maybe lived even a lot longer, but at least right now, once you've hit maybe 120, that might be the end game. Okay. We are now moving into the next phase of what we're doing. And we're not going to fully master this the way God has mastered it while we're living here in this life. But we can master it to the point where we get to live a much more enjoyable, prosperous, happy life than one that we're miserable about. But it's the feeling has to come first. The feeling of joy, happiness, gratitude, appreciation, prosperity, abundance, health, fitness, whatnot. The good feeling has to show up first. It's not the thing shows up and then we feel good. Unfortunately, but it's the way the universe works. The good feeling has to show up first before the change will happen.
That's a lot of help. That you really made a big difference that I can understand. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're totally welcome. Good. I feel better. I'm like, I can't leave Francine stuck. All right. You're welcome. I know we stayed on just one question, one topic, so I'll take another question or two before I go if anybody would like. I may not go quite that deep though. We'll see. Anybody? Wow. Everybody has everything they want in life. That's awesome.
Kevin,
Yes.
I'd like to just thank you for all that you've been giving every day for as long as I've been coming. You're really giving, you're really walking us like children from step 1, step 2, step 3, and just continually feeding us a little, and growing us. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, hey, you're totally welcome. And yeah, I mean, there's no way I could feed it to you in a day. And if I fed you the wrong part too soon, it just, yeah. That's why I'm trying to go through partly what I was brought through. Okay. But also I've been coaching people for a while and I have experience with it. And I'm going, okay, foundationally, what I'm trying to do for you guys is this specific thing. You could ask for different things in your life and that's fine. I'm trying to very specifically say, hey, look, if you want to increase your income and add more wealth in your life, what would be a process that I could help take you through if you're with me every day, which most of you won't be, that, over time will sink in and give you some ahas so that your awareness is deepened. And then as your awareness goes, and I'll be honest too, I love doing this. I also hope some of you choose to hire me as a coach, okay? Because I can help speed this up so much in a very focused setting, to where those of you that are trying to earn $100,000 to $1 million, instead of taking 5 years to do it, I can help you do it in a year or two. But
Kevin,
yeah,
help me, help us
uh-huh.
to learn how to make that money.
That's what I'm doing.
so we can pass it on to you.
Yeah.
And then you can pass more on to us. And we continue passing more on to you and spread it to other people too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's essentially what I'm doing. The speed at which this can be done just can be, and understanding each individual. Like I had to spend some time a few minutes ago with her, right? Getting to know the situation. If I know each of you individually, it's a lot easier to help you get where you want to get to much quicker. So I'm hoping some people will go, you know what, I'm just tired of waiting. Let's get it done. Instead of, again, I can take short or long. And I'm not saying, hey, get out of here to anybody. I'm going to keep doing this. It's because I enjoy it. It's good for me. It's good for you guys. It keeps me engaged. I just know that some of you guys get a little bit fearful about it, or you go, oh, it might cost money or something. And as a business person and also an entrepreneur, not just somebody who's taught law of attraction, but somebody who's done those things too and had some success with it, I recognize that, you know what, from a financial standpoint, if you were to increase your income by any of you by 100 grand this year, it's not just increased by 100 grand this year. It's now all those years going forward. And it tends to multiply and go up over time. So it's kind of like, well, do I want that first 100 grand year to be 5 years from now, or do I want it to be this year? Do I want my first 7-figure income year to be in the next 1 to 2 years, or I don't want it to be 5 or 6 or 7 years from now? I'm not saying that's how it will happen exactly, but I'm saying that's the speed in which we can move things. If somebody says, oh, okay, that makes sense to me, right? I want to get to a point where I'm enjoying things more now and not necessarily waiting as long for those things to happen, because the most discouraging thing that happens to most people when they're trying to learn how this works is not getting results in a timely manner, because then we start to believe the story that our subconscious is putting out. Oh, that's BS. Can't be for me. I'm not good enough. It gives it more time to screw around with us. When I work with someone, if they do what I share with them to do, they don't have as much time for their subconscious mind to argue with them and talk them out of doing things that they really want to do. So thank you.
It takes time to grow. It takes time to grow, and there's a beauty in watching things grow, and there's a beauty in watching yourself grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we're sitting here thinking it's not coming fast enough, you're missing a big chunk of the experience, because a big part of it is experiencing that growth, that opening up. Like, you've introduced me to things that I'm like chasing. Like, I've gone into Leslie's website, and
Awesome.
I've spent hours and hours. I've almost read that whole rabbit book.
Jackrabbit Factory. I love that.
Yeah,
book.
and I'm
Yes.
like, I love this. And it's just it all just is coming together so well. And
Cool.
you're such a step-by-step good teacher. It's kind of like, I'm learning to walk again, and it's fun. I'm seeing things, I'm working on that 300 list, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I 40, really, Rika? 40? Look at your life, really? Then I go, okay, I want a new faucet.
Yeah.
It's just really, my mind is just beginning to open like a blossom. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, I'm not in a hurry. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, and so here's what I'm getting, and I guess hurry is some of you are going to feel impressed, like you've been impressed already at some point. It may not be you specifically, folks that are on this call, but just in a general sense, like when I went through my journey, I was at a point where I was totally ready for the change, in the sense of, okay, life for me. I want it to change. So, and Bob Proctor talks about this and some others too, that when it does kick in, sometimes it comes so fast and so quickly that you're like, where was it hiding during all the lean years? And so some people are just to the point where they're like, yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. I'm to the point where I'm ready for this. And that's where I was, but I had a lot of other training as trying to run a business, be an entrepreneur, be a real estate investor. And I understood those things, but I wasn't getting the results at the time. And I'm like, so I really wanted to understand the law of attraction piece of it well enough. And what I learned by spending that time with Leslie and then doing my own work, of course, was I'm like, oh my gosh, Every time I get around somebody that's the right person, not just read their material, not just watch their video, but I spend the time with them and actually get to interact and consult and converse with them, the speed at which I grow is so much faster. And I'm like, so that was like a big aha for me.
Yeah.
And so not everybody here, they're ready for that point, and that's totally cool. I'm not trying to shove anybody to do something you're not ready for. What I'm saying is if the intuitive nudge is saying, you know what, that I'm there. Let's go make this, let's change this and let's change it now. That's what I'm ready for. Then I'm just saying I'm available for that. That's what I specialize in. But I also am going to continue again to do what you're talking about, which is go through a process that, it may take us, I don't know, months and months and months and a year before I get through the whole process. I don't know. um, but there's definitely, when I get to know somebody and they want that help, so far so good. Everybody that's ever paid me has always received back multiples of whatever it was that they paid.
Yeah.
So I'm not too concerned about it. I'm just wanting you guys to, some people get the feeling, yes, I should, but they get freaked out because sometimes it costs a little money. Okay. Well, and to you, it may not seem like a little money, but if you're going to get multiples of it back in a short period of time, and not just for this year, next year, but you get that multiples back for the rest of your life, and you start adding that up. That's why people tend to go to school usually. Not everybody. Some people go to school to learn a profession because that's what they love. But a lot of people, they choose to get more education, higher education, put themselves in debt, get student loans, do all that stuff because they hope to make more money in their life more quickly and live a better life. And most people, that doesn't work out very well. And that's another reason why they get scared. Well, it's interesting because I help people do it in under a year usually. So
Yeah.
anyhow, if anybody is interested, you can email me. I'll give out my email address. Please don't use it to spam me though. It's simply my name with coach in front of it. So it's Coach Kevin Sparks at gmail.com. If you'd like to talk about it, I do have a group thing that's starting up next Tuesday that I'm doing, and then I do one-on-one also. But the group thing that I'm doing, I'm keeping it pretty intimate, meaning it's not going to have 20, 30, 40 people in it. It might have 6 to 8 kind of thing, and give everybody plenty of opportunity for us to interact with each other. Thank you guys so much for spending the time any other, because that was a comment. Do I have any burning questions like you won't sleep tonight if you don't get it answered?
Hey, Kevin. So for the new people, it's based on the comment that she just made. What was the website and the book that you recommended?
Okay, so let me go to my screen share really quick. Maybe you hopped on a little bit later. Bang. Okay, let's hang on a second. So here's a website. The book that we're going through today, if you want to download it, I do have it in our Facebook group, but if you want to go directly to where Leslie has it, you go to hiddentreasuresbook.com and then click here for free download. That's where you can get a copy. And then what she's saying is, she likes the book well enough that she's like, well, who's it? I think, right? Who's Leslie? And da-da-da. So she started going down.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
And then
I
she
thought
found
we were
other
missing-
material. Yeah.
I knew the book. I thought she was saying another book,
Well,
something
there is
factor.
another, yeah, it's called the Jackrabbit Factor. It's an
Okay.
it's in story format. I use that sometimes too. I may use that in something we do in the future. I really like it. I like doing some of this first because then when you go read that, it kind of cements some of it because it puts it into a story that is really kind of follows the real life that Leslie and her husband went through, but in a totally fictional story, but that teaches how this works. It's really cool. So I know what she's talking about. I actually read that book before I read Hidden Treasures years ago when Leslie gave it to me. So. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Get off screen share, back to here. All right. Well, I think we are done for the day. Thank you guys for hanging out, spending some time with me. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. You have an amazing weekend.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Kevin.
Kevin. You
Thank you.
too.
Welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.